And finally, R is for review. And by the way, I'll get more into LSAT Flex in just a little bit. R is for review, and review could involve a couple of different factors depending on which section you're dealing with. I'm going to speak generally about logical reasoning and reading comp for now, and then I'll circle back to games since I know that you've been working on the logic puzzles recently. So for reasoning and reading comp, I recommend what I call the Socratic review method. And the Socratic review method is a way to deeply analyze everything that gives you trouble. And I call it Socratic because it involves a series of questions that you're asking yourself to get down to the root of a problem, to understand why you personally got a question wrong, what specifically gave you difficulty about it. So let's say in logical reasoning, you've got the stimulus, the question stem, and the answer choices. If the stimulus gave you trouble, what about the stimulus was difficult? Did it involve conditional statements? Did they fail to use indicator words for either evidence and conclusion or sufficient necessary? Did they bury the conclusion in the middle of the stimulus? Did they use annoying words like except, unless, until, or without that are not neatly sufficient or necessary indicators but require some additional manipulation to make them conditional? Did you have to link together multiple conditional statements? Was the conclusion buried in the middle of the stimulus? Did they include counter premises or filler? So you see, there's lots of ways they can increase the difficulty level of a stimulus. And now I haven't even gotten to the answer choices yet. So if you're having trouble with logical reasoning, you can see why. There's like 10 different difficult things they can do. And a level 5 question may involve all of those. A level 1 question may involve none of them. And that one could be a gimme for most people. But you got to consider that they're aiming to separate people all along the spectrum from 120 to 180. So there are certain questions that may only have one trick, and that's a level 1, meant to separate those in the 120s from those in the 130s. There may be questions that involve 5 of these, and that's meant to separate someone in the 150s from someone in the 160s. And so when you're doing your own review process, you want to actually write out, you want to articulate or talk with a friend or a coach or a tutor, a study buddy, a professor, and ask them and talk out with them each of these traps or tricks and figure out which ones did you catch, which ones did you spot, and which ones are you uniquely prone to falling for so that you can resolve it and avoid making the same mistake again, because these things do repeat themselves. And it's really nice, actually, that you have more exams available to you than anybody ever in history. In the year 2020, you got 89 numbered exams, again, a handful that are unnumbered. And if you even only studied 10 of these in excruciating detail, that would really be enough. You know, I talked with a guy, I became friends with this guy who used to write actual LSAT questions, and he talks like an LSAT question. It's really remarkable. And so you could see in discussing with him that he thinks about these tricks to include, and you know, they take a certain pleasure in it, but I can respect it actually, because although it's not nice to be on the receiving end of that, if you can spot those tricks and traps, and you can even get to the point where you could maybe even make your own little mini drill exhibiting just 1 or 2 of these things and see it from their perspective better, you can understand why some people might confidently pick the wrong answer and others might just be scratching their head. And there's lots of ways to play around with it, but that's the job of this exam. So that's the stimulus. Then the question stem, obviously there are some classic wordings. They might use certain keywords. If they say strengthen, then it's somewhat likely it's a strengthening question. Other times it may be a most strongly supported question, which is more of an inference typically. And so properly recognizing and distinguishing question stems is really important. And in newer exams, they've gotten more clever in referring to common LSAT question types in uncommon or unfamiliar ways. And so recognizing what's a synonymous word or phrase to reflect or to represent a classic question type is really important. So did you misunderstand the question type, or did you simply not know how to approach it? But there's truly nothing really new under the sun. So if you can relate it back, that'll be useful for you. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.